Hey, MH3 here, and today I want to talk to you about how building a team is like building your sponsorship portfolio. Now, I understand that in business, there are far too many sports analogies, right? It's a bit of an epidemic. It's kind of easy. I mean, think about it. A lot of business leaders played sports, where captain of a team, or even in some cases like a team manager. They understood the value of leadership and hard work and slugging it out together, breaking bones, sharing sweat, um, you know, literally bleeding on one another. So maybe that's the reason there's so many sports analogies in business, plus the terminology, right? Like playbook, pep talk, and have a huddle, and sacrifice, goals, metrics, get something over the finish line, get it into the end zone, a grand slam idea. I think the language of sport is so easily understood in business that it's hard for us not to go back to this notion that sports and teamwork is much like business. Another thing, for better or for worse, is that business is often about, quite frankly, winning and losing, right? It's about gaining market share. It's about winning a proposal. It's about defeating your opponent. It's about getting a patent. It's about being first to market. It's, raising more money. It's a win, 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 win. So we have all these analogies. And I bring this up because this week marks the start of NFL free agency. It kicks off really a vital couple of months for teams. Now that the combine is over, you start looking at your roster, free agency opens, the draft in Pittsburgh's coming up in late April. This is the time of year when teams all have hope, right? Everybody wants to be the 2026 Seattle Seahawks, right? Maybe you're going to make some key choices on your team, like sign a maligned but veteran quarterback and hope for the best. Shuttle your star wide receiver to another team because you've got somebody on your squad that, given the right exposure and right opportunity, has a chance to emerge as literally the best receiver in the league. Jettison your quarterback to another team as well because you've signed that maligned quarterback you've decided you're going to put your faith into going forward. You've got a solid defensive line, yet you bring a guy over from another team who's a multi-time Pro Bowler and give him an opportunity to potentially chase that Super Bowl ring that he thought he wasn't going to get in another market. Draft a whole bunch of rookies, literally in the 5th round, who outperformed that lower mid-round draft selection or rating to become part of a Super Bowl magical run. So if you're waiting for my analogy between sports and business, here it is. I think there's a real metaphor to be exploited or explored around building a team, much like as a brand you would build your sponsorship portfolio. And when I think about a team and its roster of players and athletes, I think very similarly how that reflects a brand and its roster of sponsorship partners. Like a sports team, a brand has a budget, right? You got a cap, and you got to deploy that budget in as many ways, as optimally as you possibly can, to achieve the best results. A brand, like a team, is going to look at their current portfolio and say, this partnership works, this partnership's been around for a while, this partnership outperforms what we're investing, maybe this partnership here needs to be adjusted or tweaked or potentially exited. And we need to look out at, what are our competitors doing? What partnerships do they have that potentially, like a free agent, we might want to go and steal that, or outbid that incumbent partner to get that property or that opportunity, those assets. And like college players that are coming into the draft, you might think about new and emerging properties that at this stage in their career, in their development, in their legacy, might be really good value for your brand. And that if you get in now, potentially you're going to find something that's hot, that's going to rise to the top, that's going to maybe outperform some of your higher paid existing partners. Just like that rookie on a rookie contract can sometimes provide much more impact per dollar paid than some of your veteran players. The other thing you have to think about is, what is your competition doing? Think about if another team is loading up on edge rushers, then you need to think about your offensive tackles. If another brand is loading up on new types of partnerships, purpose-driven partnerships, or music, or women's sports, you need to understand, well, why are they doing that? And what part of the market segment are they going after in doing that? And thinking of market segment, how is your consumer changing? What are her needs? How are they evolving? What about your customers? What about your different channels? So like a sports team, you can't just look inward. You can't just look at yourself. You can't just sit back and say, this is what we need to be doing. You got to look at, what are your competitors doing? What's happening in the environment? And what's happening with your consumer? How, quite frankly, is the game changing? And how are you going to respond to that? How are you going to react? How are you going to make the moves that you need to move? This selection of players, like a sponsored portfolio, has become more science than art. Now, don't get me wrong. I appreciate that in both instances, gut feel still comes up. But think about assessing athletes and the data and the information, and the statistics and the measurables that you get out of things like an NFL combine. And you think about looking out at your sponsorship portfolio in a much similar way. You need to go into the CFO with numbers, with predictions, with analytics, with reference points, with consumer sentiment, with an understanding of what's the value you're going to get, not just the impressions or the eyeballs, but how is this going to move the needle for your brand and impact brand consideration, your positioning, allow you to open doors potentially to government or other types of accounts and things like that. So you've got to think about it in a very robust and wholesome manner. So I made the comment before about thinking about your players, your partners, as players, and looking at that portfolio of who are the established, what's working, what's not, where are the hidden gems that potentially you can utilize, where are the opportunities that your opponent, competitive brand, might be utilizing that you might think, well, we should go in that direction, or perhaps they're there, so we're going to go here. When I think about this analogy that I made today, it kind of reminds me of fantasy football, which ironically, I don't play fantasy football. And there's a whole bunch of reasons that we don't need to discuss today why that is. But I think for all of you who are fantasy football managers or fantasy sports managers in general, and you happen to be in the sponsorship marketing world or in the brand building world or in the rights holder world or the media world, I'm sure the analogy is clear for you. And you probably understand the discussion of my point. So here we are. Get ready. For all football fans, for all teams, this is the opportunity that you've been waiting for. Super Bowl's in the rearview mirror. Combines happened. Now it's time to watch every move your team is going to make from here through the draft. And if you happen to be in the sponsored marketing business, which I know many of you are, think about what's the roster you're pulling together to build your brand, build your business, and have an amazing 2026. I'm Mark Harrison.